Okay, serious times.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to SyrupCast episode 36. My name is Daniel Bader, and this is SyrupCast for March 18th, 2015. As always, I'm joined by two of my lovely co-hosts, Douglas Soltis. How are you?
Hello, citizens.
And Jane McIntyre. How are you on this fine day?
I'm good. I can't believe our podcast is 36 weeks old. It's full term.
It is.
Is that a baby thing?
Yeah, well, 36 weeks is like full term, but technically
I'll end the
40
podcast
weeks.
with some crying sounds.
Yeah.
Just to
Wow.
bring home that it's finally alive.
Ooh, we should spend the whole podcast whining
We were going to do that
Slenta?
anyway.
and pooping ourselves.
Pod Slenta.
Yeah.
What does that taste like, Douglas?
Tastes like tech, Bader.
Apparently it's like a big steak. Sorry.
It tastes like circuit board and the New York Times radiation article.
What's that about? Let's open with that, because I didn't read it.
Well, apparently your phone and your smartwatch will give you cancer. It's going to happen because Nick Bilton said it will.
I'm going to get moto cancer.
Wasn't that article called Nick Bilton Says a Lot of Things?
Hey, Kat.
Because I'm pretty sure that's what I read.
Yeah.
Well, so they changed the title later. Basically,
What was the original
article
title?
that I think it was your phone or your wearable may be at risk of giving you cancer. Like, it was a very matter-of-fact title.
Okay, that doesn't sound like... It sounds like they were they were potentially enough about it.
Well, they did a bunch of research and they talked to a bunch of hacks.
Oh.
And there was a guy there was an anti-vaxxer who they used as a source to say that. And there was a guy. There was actually a really funny GIF. One of the guys that they used as a source had gone on Dr. Oz to claim that eating eggplants will cure your cancer.
Oh, I
Sorry, is this the New York Post?
Really yeah, I nearly made
Yeah,
like a
pretty much.
Steve Jobs comment about how eating fruits and veg worked out so well for his cancer.
Oh, is that what he did? Is that what he said? I think
got-
that he realized.
He got a very, very, very curable form of pancreatic cancer, which can be cured with a Whipple surgery, which is very minor. And he tried to cure his cancer for several months with a raw fruit diet.
I think that there's a difference between attempting a natural solution first and then being like, okay, well, eating a healthy diet and exercising didn't fix this problem, so let's start on the hard stuff.
I agree that that certainly some illnesses can be minimized or even cured with a healthy diet and exercise, but I do not believe any form of cancer is one of those.
Well, that's not true. I actually know a good friend who had his cancer reduced by like a factor of 10 just by
But not a
changing
cure.
his diet.
Not a cure, though.
Well, it's shrunk to the point where it was operable. But wow, we are so off topic. This is like when we were
doctors,
talking about
comment,
Jesus
check
today.
in, school us. We need to know. Anyway.
This is what happens when the
don't
New York
agree.
Times writes about tech.
Well, they wrote about it in the style section. Actually, there are some really good writers in the New York Times tech section.
You take that back, Douglas.
Former Recode writer Mike Isaac. There's Farhad Manjoo
Wasn't David
from
Pogue at the time?
Slate. Pogue left to join the Yahoo Tech division, just to head it up, actually, which has done diddly squat.
I was about to say something snarky. I'm like, that's really mean. You shouldn't say that. And then there you went.
Well, so I was watching. This is like a complete other aside, but I watched the beginning of Harmontown last night on Netflix. You know this?
Yeah.
So Harmontown is a documentary that follows Dan Harmon on a cross-country tour of Harmontown, which is his podcast that he does live in front of an audience, and he has a partner there, and it's a really funny podcast. But this documented his time between season 4 and 6 of Community, when he was fired at the end of at the end of season 3. He was fired at the end of season 3, brought back for season 5, and this was his time at the end of 2012, beginning of 2013, where he was doing a cross-country tour. Anyway, it's a really interesting doc. The guy is completely different, and yet exactly what I thought he would be like. Definitely recommended. Netflix is a mobile product. We can get away with talking about Netflix.
Are you saying Dan Harmon gives smartwatches cancer?
It's exactly what I said.
Podcast title right there. Potentially, maybe, possibly.
Nick Bilton gave Dan Harmon cancer, which he cured with comedy
and fruit.
All right, that's the rumor that we want to spread. So let's start talking about actual technology news. This week, we're going to start with one of the stranger stories that I've seen in a while. Fido is planning on targeting millennials with its upcoming branding and strategy overhaul. It's going to be introducing a monocled, bejeweled dog as its new mascot, which makes sense. Fido is the brand. But we've received some leaked information from a very reliable source, and everybody in the comments, this came up this morning, everybody in the comments hates it. What do you guys think? I mean, there's obviously more to it than just the four leaked documents that we've seen. But do you think that this is going to work?
I think we need a new definition for millennials, because I just decided to look up, because people tell me that I'm a millennial and I'm 25, but apparently millennials were born as early as the early 1980s. So I don't think anybody approaching 30 years old or 35 years old is going to be happy with a YOLO plan, which is what they're calling it.
That's the word that I was waiting for. YOLO is the from what I understand, that's the name of their overarching plan strategy. You only live once. These are your choices. There may be the YOLO 25, the YOLO 50, the YOLO 200.
Yeah.
There may be a YOLO bay. You never know with these things.
Okay, as much as all of us don't want to be identified in this way, Fido has kind of languished for years as being this brand that is visibly different from Rogers, but functionally not. So if they're trying to put some time and effort into there being a reason for Fido to exist, I think that's interesting. Whether or not it succeeds is
right. But this is actually, so the nuts and bolts of this. I mean, we can make fun of it, but let's get into the nuts and bolts. This is actually Fido becoming more like Rogers from an infrastructure and strategy perspective. They're doing away with a lot of what made Fido Fido. They're doing away with Fido dollars, which is what separated the company from every other company, from every other carrier in Canada. I mean, that was a holdover from their microcell days, where you were rewarded for being a Fido customer. Every month you'd get 4% of your monthly bill towards perks. You could put them towards new phones. You could put them towards value packs, things like that. There was a Fido store which you could use with your to spend money on. Use your Fido dollars to buy things, accessories, etc. So that's going to be going away, which is a big change for the company, right? Instead, they're going to be focusing on content, value-added content, the same way that Rogers is throwing in 2 years of Show Me and a year of NHL Game Center Live. They're going to be looking at similar types of value-added services. For example, their Vice Media partnership, and they're, from what we understand, a streaming music partnership. We don't know the streaming music provider yet, but I'm assuming it's somebody like Spotify. But the most interesting part of this is that they'll be introducing a value pack that actually waives the bandwidth from certain messaging apps. So whenever you use apps like 3 of them were named explicitly: Viber, WhatsApp, and iMessage. Those could be in contravention of the CRTC's net neutrality laws, because Could be. We don't know. But I was talking to Ben Klass earlier, who was on our show a few weeks ago, and he said that there may be a lot of complaints by consumer advocacy groups like the PIAC and the CAC around this because it could set a really bad precedent. So functionally, I don't actually think this is an improvement, nor is it something that makes Fido different from Rogers. It actually makes them more alike, internally.
Sorry, I guess I just meant from the actual the targeting actually reflecting the brand rather than it being, because Fido previously was this kind of off-brand thing that some people like. There was some kind of pricing differentiation, but you were essentially kind of like a weird quasi Rogers customer. At least with this, it looks like even if they're mirroring kind of like their overall strategy, it's targeted to specific people. But now, as you're saying, like that is with these the whole issue around Rogers' current strategy is that value add doesn't necessarily work when mixed with common carriage.
Mm. Yeah, and so a lot of what makes Fido traditionally is that it's a discount brand compared to the flagship Rogers. So I'm looking right now. Their standard plans, which give I believe $200 maximum in subsidy. You can get a 5 gig plan with unlimited unlimited nationwide calling, and unlimited texting for $94. 5 gigs of data. The equivalent Rogers plan, which would give you 6 gigs of data, is $105. $125. So it is cheaper still than a Rogers plan, but you don't get as high a subsidy.
Fido, enjoy Rogers plans from 3 years ago.
Ooh.
Yeah, but I mean that's really what Kudo and Virgin have been doing too. So what separates a subsidiary from its mainline flagship brand in Canada? Not a whole lot. At least with Public Mobile, the relaunch of Public Mobile that TELUS is about to go through, there's some real differentiation. There's data-only plans. There's at least seems to be some innovation. They're not actually selling any hardware. It's a SIM-only carrier, essentially.
I'm reading the comments. Sorry. Read the comments.
Never read the comments.
On the Fido thing, I'm seeing what the readers are the most upset about, and I think that like the first thing is the Fido dollars. That's what people care about.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very interesting thing. They're very
Someone said nobody
nostalgic.
cares about Fido dollars anymore, and then someone else said I shop around every time my contract is up, but at the end of the day, using those Fido dollars towards the cost of my phone, like $150 towards the cost of my new phone, makes the most sense.
I wonder if that's just going to be replaced with Rogers' overall rewards package, which they've tried to revamp.
There is going to be a rewards element, but we don't know the exact details of that. I think the actual benefits of the reward program, as I said, are going to be more about free content or discounted content. So you'll be able to use it towards, say, 10 hours of Vice Media content or whatever. That way they could get around this whole idea of exclusivity that Bell's not allowed to do. They're not allowed to charge you in a non-monetary way. They're not allowed to charge you per hour as opposed to per megabyte. But I think Rogers may be able to get away with it by integrating into their membership. Sorry?
That's where it's like a reward based upon use rather than what type of customer you are. So it's like an earned discount rather than a competitive pricing snafu.
Right. I guess is it a contravention of the CRTC's net neutrality rules if you benefit exclusively through a membership program than through a monthly contract or a monthly plan the way that you do on Bell. So if Rogers says that they're only allowing Fido subscribers to see this Vice Media content, does it actually disadvantage any other company like TELUS or Bell? Mm-hmm. They'll argue that it doesn't because they're not actually asking customers to sign up for a particular package here. They're just getting that benefit by being a member. So that'll be an interesting thing to see, because I don't know if anybody's challenged net neutrality in that way yet, at least in Canada.
Yeah.
But another thing about this is that Fido is going to be increasing its prepaid data plans up to 2 gigabytes. So, whenever I go away, I was in Spain for Mobile World Congress. I was in Germany a couple of summers ago. It's really easy to get cheap data plans up to 6 gigs. I got a 2 gigabyte plan for like €15. In Canada, it's really hard to get high data prepaid plans. It's like $30 for a gig of data. So if Fido ends up lowering the amount of a la carte data, at least based on a prepaid plan, I think that would be great for travelers and visitors, because I was thinking recently about this. I travel to other countries all the time, and I never have a problem getting a decently priced roaming package or a decently priced prepaid data plan. In Canada, I feel for the people coming here, because there's really no good solution. You either have to go with Wind, which isn't in every city, or you go with one of the big three, and their prepaid plans suck.
But even the cost of data on a contract is not great compared to abroad, compared to Europe.
Absolutely.
So
it's totally, it's much, much higher. On the other hand, the argument is that when you're a customer in Canada, you get access to the entire country's network,
right?
For one price per month. But when you're a visitor, you're not typically traveling, traversing an entire country like Canada. You're staying in one city, or at most a few cities, in a short amount of time. And there should be a way, like you can in the U.S., to buy daily or weekly packs to get cheaper data. It's kind of disappointing when you look at it from that perspective.
Monocle Dog does not approve.
The Canadian dollar is so weak now that at least if you're coming from the U.S., you can save a bit of money by
coming from
changing
Europe
some of your money. To a lesser extent, but the euro is actually really weak right now too. So we'll see. I mean, Fido's coming. The big branding change is expected to arrive in late April, early May. Could come sooner, could come later. We'll find out shortly.
Someone in the comments said that they did the e-module training for this new rebranding effort, and they said it's expect lots of like hip talk, like when your parents try and be cool. So if they're already training people, I would say sooner rather than later.
Is this that miniature Spanish wrestler's fault?
Yeah.
Manny Pacquiao? No. I was like, wait, he's not Spanish, also not a wrestler.
Oh my god. SyrupCast listeners, that was not staged. That was raw and uncut. Oh,
that was raw dits right there. You can't.
I'm talking about Kudo.
Oh, is he the wrestler?
El Tamador.
Yeah.
Oh, that dude. Yeah. God, why can't anybody just follow?
Plan in your minutes.
Why can't anybody just follow Tellus's lead and just get used like pandas and hippos?
Digital
and
animals.
all these annoying characters.
Wrestlers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. Let's talk about something less depressing.
Well, it's interesting. There's a lot of very insightful comments in this post. Somebody says, a guy named Purdy44 says, "Dear Canada telecom companies, you want to appeal to millennials, make 21st century plans.
Mm-hmm.
Give lots of data for $50 or less a month. Charge extra for Canada-wide calling and voicemail because nobody uses them. Basically, bring back the 6 gigabyte super plan. Make a data-focused plan and charge separately for voicemail, daytime minutes, evenings, and weekends. The new generation doesn't care about free evenings and weekends because we never actually talk on the phone. When I make long-distance calls to friends in New York, I use my home phone or..."
Whoa, time traveler, home phone. Hold on. I was with him until then.
That's not entirely true. I mean, maybe he's still... There's two types of people I see with home phones today. There's sort of the parents, grandparents who never gave up their home phone, who aren't quite as techy, and then there's the new parents slash people who still live at home, who may be at home a lot, and it's still cheaper to spend
millennials living
a
in
month
their parents' home.
Well, yeah, a lot of millennials still live at home.
Yeah, but okay.
I don't think I'll ever have a home phone again.
So the reason why millennials gravitate to a brand like Wind isn't because Wind's super cool and speaks to them. Because it hits their price point and their need. So
it doesn't even really hit their need.
Almost.
The service is crap. So
but it's
price
trying
point,
to you, right?
Yeah.
And that
and
will
Wind
get
tab.
better as Chairman Handsome continues his expansion. So like all the effort being put into the lingo and the dog and everything. And even to a certain extent, like at least when Virgin does stuff, they're like, we're actually trying to do some things that we think our audience would really enjoy. This is all because like Rogers is unwilling to change the fundamentals of the business. So
well, they need to increase ARPU somehow. So generally, they don't report Fido ARPU, average revenue per user, but they need to convert more people into postpaid customers. And the way to do that is by charging more for the plans, and then, like what they're doing with Show Me and Game Center on Rogers, get people to subscribe to these sort of value-added services. So they'll offer Vice for free for a couple of years, and if people are into it, then hopefully they'll spend $4 or $5 a month to subscribe. Mm-hmm. But in the short term, people are going to realize that there isn't a whole lot of extra value in what they're offering. I mean, we don't know the details yet, so we'll come back to it in the next few weeks when they do announce it. But go to anybody listening who hasn't gone to the new public mobile site, publicmobile.ca. It's actually very interesting. It hasn't launched yet, and we haven't tried it, but it's going to be running on TELUS's LTE network, and it has a lot of potential to be quite disruptive. So we'll see. Moving on, I think one of the more interesting stories this week was the fact that Windows 10 is now going to be launching earlier than expected in the summer. We don't know when it'll be launching on phones, but one can only assume a few more technical previews will happen between now and this summer, and it'll make it a lot more usable. But Windows 10 is becoming this, I think, powerhouse example of the omni-platform, omni-channel solution for both consumers and developers, and enterprise users and big data users and Internet of Things users. Like everybody, Windows 10 finally seems to be going at it the right way.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that it's even just based on, you can see what people's reactions are just to the previews and to the features that Microsoft is announcing and the kind of demos that they're giving. I feel like with Windows 8 and even 8.1, there's this like feeling of dread. It's like, oh, it's coming out soon. They're going to make us switch to it, and it's going to be awful. But I feel like Windows 10 people are actually excited, and there's like you're seeing a lot of the new Microsoft, which is like mobile first and a lot of compatibility with different cloud services and really flexibility, I guess.
Yeah, and one thing that's so interesting about it is that I've been using it on my Surface Pro 3, and it's super usable. I mean, both as a tablet OS and a Windows desktop OS, it feels a lot nicer than Windows 8.1 ever did, even in its maturity, in its current state.
In what ways? What are like those tangible things?
Well, what I liked about it was that you could. I mean, what I like about Windows 8, in general, is that you can coordinate different windows fairly easily. The full screen experience when the app is well developed is actually quite good, and the ability to sort of switch between running apps always felt like it was better suited for the tablet. With Windows 10, they finally brought back a lot of those desktop mouse keyboard shortcuts that make people really happy. But then when you remove your tablet from the docking station, for example, the tablet mode makes touch points bigger. So Windows 8.1 doesn't actually make touch points bigger. It's just you're tapping at the same size touch point. You're like, damn
Totally.
it, this won't work.
Yeah.
Windows 10 actually activates a tablet mode that allows you to use apps in a more touch-friendly way, even when they're not explicitly meant to be used in a tablet mode. Then there's all these other apps that Microsoft's developing as an example to others, the same way that Google develops really great first-party apps for Android, as a way to create great multi-screen apps, multi-size apps. So apps that work really well for desktop, tablet, and phone. So I think we'll see more of those.
So the experience is changing beyond just the interface.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's also more about the services. I mean, OneDrive's a better service. OneNote is a better designed service. All of their kind of multi-platform Office ideas seem to be working fairly well together. I saw a presentation about Skype recently and how Microsoft wants Skype to be the glue that brings all of its disparate services together, as a messaging platform. So basically the same way that Hangouts connects to Google Plus, except not annoying, right? Because Google Plus ruined the sort of social, I don't know, that binding nature of Google, around Google Plus just doesn't feel right. Whereas I think Skype has the potential to be implemented right. So I have hope. I have hope. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to switch from Mac, or it doesn't mean that I'm going to switch from Mac, but at least you can get decent Microsoft services on a Mac.
Yeah, and it's also that they're working harder to bring their services to other platforms like Mac. So like Cortana is going to be on iOS and Android. A lot more of their what previously were Windows and Windows Phone exclusive services and apps are now available across multiple platforms, which is awesome.
I mean, how many Windows platform services do you use generally?
I'm pretty outside the ecosystem at this point. But a lot of that was because, I wasn't using, because of that exclusivity to the hardware, or like the predominance of it, I wasn't getting in there. So just looking at my phone, I
use Skype. I feel like if they're trying to make, and I feel like if they're trying to make Skype the glue that ties everything together, they're also going to be like, if they can position it sort of like as a gateway drug. So they'll say, hey, you're using Skype and you want to send files. Like, do you know you can access those on OneDrive? And you might be like, I didn't. But sure.
Well, that's how it's going to happen.
Yeah. So if I'm like talking to Doug on Skype and I send him a file and he receives it and accepts it, but they say, hey, Jane and Doug, you can access every file that you've ever sent each other if you sign up for OneDrive and enable like cloud storage of your conversation or an archive of your conversation. I'd be like, Doug, we should install OneDrive.
Yeah, I would say that there's also a lot of applications that they've recently purchased that you might have been using on iOS that are becoming official Microsoft versions of things. So that would be it. But, for me, I guess it's Skype, and then I have an Outlook.com email address, which I was really excited for to be kind of like a counter Gmail hub, and it's never really become that because they really don't do profile identity that well, even compared to Google, who doesn't do it well at all.
I don't know. Google's doing a lot better. I mean, maybe when it comes to design, they're doing a lot better. I still rely on Docs. Right. Sorry, you meant identity in general.
Yeah, just managing multiple is still like the biggest hurdle. I always have to check to see what Google I am at that moment.
Yeah, it's funny. I rely on two different browsers to do two different Google instances. Safari's my one and Chrome is my other.
Yep.
They really do have to make it easier to switch between identities. I don't know. I mean, I use Inbox, or I use Outlook on my iPhone.
You don't use Inbox. No way.
I do actually. I use Inbox as well. I don't know. I use Outlook for iOS. I don't think it's as good on Android. I stick with
Got an update,
Gmail and Inbox. It did. It's just not as good as the iOS version. The iOS version, because Acompli was iOS first.
Yeah.
And by the time Microsoft bought them, they were heavily into iOS development. They'd done several iterations. They got it down, and they had only gotten sort of out of beta when it launched on Android, and it still feels like a beta. There's some things missing. It doesn't feel quite as complete. I like it, and they just got a really nice update to sync your contacts and your calendar, but I don't think that it's as good as the native Gmail app. And I also just think that Google has such a good Gmail experience on Android that nothing will supplant it in terms of convenience, right?
Yeah. No, I agree.
It's just nice to see Microsoft working on other platforms, and I think that's
Right.
With Cortana coming to Windows, coming to iOS and Android after Windows 10 launches, which is another big story of the week. I think they will, they'll obviously have a problem on iOS and Android getting to a system level access. That the same problem happens with Google Now on iOS. You don't have access to those same system level functions as you do on Android. And Google Now is so smart and so useful because it's everywhere, and it just shows you what you need to know when you need to know it. But yeah, I hope they do it right. I hope they make it worth entering the Cortana app, whatever that looks like, more than just to search with your voice or have a funny conversation with her.
Right.
So, I'll give Cortana a try just to have Cortana on my phone. Like that
It's
personality.
good. It's very good. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly like playing Halo 4.
Rampancy?
Well, so the Reuters reports that the company's new version of Cortana is internally referred to as Einstein. Cortana's success will be knowing where the user is, what time it is, and what he or she is trying to do. So obviously context is important, but how is Cortana, especially on iOS, going to provide you that context? On Android, it's a little bit easier because there are sort of these persistent background services that work really well, but the iOS APIs restrict you to geofencing, so you can't really do anything unless you leave or enter a certain area, right?
Well, no, that's not true, because like even with kind of Google Now on iOS, because I'm tied into Google services and I have a Google Calendar, it still tells me when I need to leave to get to a place. But it's not doing it in the Google Now way. It's using the other Google services that I have to do that. So like the Cloud Brain's still working. It just has an end around to get the mobile experience to talk to me, right?
Yeah, but that sort of it's the same type of notification as somebody's trying to send you a photo on somebody sent you a photo on Snapchat, or your friend just joined Meerkat, right? There's no differentiation between those kinds of notifications on iOS. On Android, especially if you have Google Now Launcher, you just swipe to the left or to the right, and the left pane is Google Now, and I find myself relying on that pane so much that I can't not use the Google Now Launcher for that reason, because it's so integral to the way that I use Android these days.
Mm-hmm.
Son of a bitch. Sorry. Excuse me.
What
I
happened?
just noticed like a gallery update on my phone when I was doing that. It's like a new gallery icon. I don't know if you guys can see where there. Is that new? I don't know. I just got it.
That just launched this week.
But that was
we didn't write
that
about
was
it.
my reaction.
I read about it, and I was hoping that you'd write about it. So go write about it, please.
All right. Yes, sir.
See you later. No, that was like a nice kind of material design update for the Moto Gallery, which is kind of cool.
Specific to Motorola. Got it. But then that's the thing, is that I've got 2 photo applications on there, and that was one of the things that when I started using the Moto X that I was like, oh, thank God, was that I wasn't forced to use photos anymore. So I just find gallery is so much
Yeah.
nicer. And it's such a
Yeah,
if some,
photos.
and it's rough because photos once you get used to it, it's not a big deal. But and I I don't mind backing my photos, but yeah, being like I feel like a lot of users when they're faced with that, hey, do you want to back up your photos and do you want to access your Google Plus photos and do you want to do this and do you want to do that? They're like, whoa, whoa, whoa! I just took a picture and I want to look at it. That's all.
We
Yeah.
should give we should give people context here because we could be talking another
Latin.
language. Basically, Google, starting with when Google Plus Photos rolled out at Google I/O 2013, I want to say, the new version came with it an app called Photos, and it basically was a repository of all of the photos on your phone, but also the photos that you've backed up to Google Plus. And increasingly, Google Plus is becoming less important to the Android ecosystem, but Photos is becoming more important because Google has found a lot of success with people backing up their entire catalog to Plus.
It was also extremely well done, right?
Yeah. I think
It is.
photos,
It's really
to an
good.
extent, could have gone towards like easing the pain point because some people, when you say, hey, you should back up your photos, and then you get up them past that hurdle of saying, oh, all my photos are stored online, and that's kind of weird. People were going into Google Plus and then going to Photos and then saying, I know it's here somewhere, it's from my last phone, and then trying to find it. So this was a really cool way to shortcut that experience. But they made it more than about that, I think, and or the language isn't very clear that that's really what it does. And it's kind of...
Well, we've seen evidence that Google Plus Photos will be a standalone product. I reported this at Mobile World Congress.
Yeah.
I think it's Ben Horowitz. He's a longtime Googler. He's taking over the project, and it seems like they're going to be separating Google Plus, and they're calling it the Stream, and then Google Photos. And Google Photos, I think, at I/O will have a huge presence.
Yeah.
It had a huge presence 2 years ago. It wasn't talked about at all last year, and I think it's due for a big update. But the problem is that when you buy a phone like even the Moto X, which is basically stock Android, every OEM bundles its own gallery app on the phone. So the first time you tap on the on a photo, it'll ask you, do you want to open this with gallery or photos? And most novices will be like, I don't know. What's the difference?
But I think it's also...
There's a huge difference.
There's a huge difference, but I think what isn't made clear enough is that Photos doesn't have to be cloud. It can also be local. Because I think right now people are seeing, because Google is pushing the Photos, cloud storage aspect of it, people, when they have that choice, are, oh, I don't want it to be on the internet, I just want it to be on my phone, so I want to go with Gallery because that's local storage.
Yeah.
And there is a way, like when Gallery asks you, hey, like, how do you want me to deal with this photo, and how when you try and open Photos for the first time, you can say, I just wanted to look it on my phone. I just want to open it on my phone. But people, I guess it's not. I mean, if it stops me in my tracks and I go, oh, hold on, what am I looking at here? Then I feel like the average user doesn't have a hope.
Totally, because there's just even with that, like there's with these clouds, there's no real way to track. Like they might give you a list of things that it's going to do in general, but like in the specific realities of those outputs are so mysterious that you kind of really don't know until after you do them. Even just with like so I had switched phones and I back up all my stuff actually to Dropbox, but I switched to an iPhone 6, did the device transfer from iPhone to iPhone, so I all my old photos are on the new device, and then the first time I connected to this device, Dropbox was like, hey, you got like 5,000 photos. Let's do this. I was like, no, you already have those photos.
Hey, Doug, want some photos?
And it's like the hardware touch points have outpaced the software's capability for you to manage what's going on.
Yeah. So what's interesting here is that I'm doing photo comparisons between a bunch of devices right now. So I'm taking the same photo 4 or 5 times, and all of them are uploading to Google Plus, and all of them show up when I open Photos. So this is my Galaxy S6 Edge. I've taken none of these photos on this device. All of these photos were taken from a Galaxy S6 or an HTC One M9. And that's the problem, is that you can't immediately tell which device, or it's not a problem, it's actually what Google wants, because it shouldn't matter what device took your photo. But it's really hard now to differentiate between local and cloud-based content when it always just backs up behind the scenes without your knowledge.
Yeah. And I think that's really cool. I didn't really consider that aspect of it, is that you could have two phones on the go, or I know that you're doing the iPhone 6 in that comparison too, so you can have like multiple phones on the go, and as long as you're signing to your Google account, you can back that up. But I feel like that's, again, limited use for the average user who's just going to have one phone.
Yeah. Well, the other thing
you
that
could have a
I
family photo account or something.
Oh my god, I do not want all my photos backing up to a family like Google Plus.
No, but like some people might, but it's also a thing where like when you delete a photo, do you know which one you're deleting it from?
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you go to Photos and you click delete this photo, and then they say, would you like to delete it from everywhere? And you're like, well, yes, I would. But when you delete it just like, I guess, from gallery, I don't know if it does that.
No, it doesn't, obviously, because the gallery photo is local. But presumably by the time you delete it from gallery, if you've gotten to somewhere with Wi-Fi, it's already been backed up to Google
Too
Plus.
late. Yep.
Because the second you hit Wi-Fi, by default it starts backing it up.
The wheels have been set in motion,
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so what were we talking about?
Microsoft.
How did we get?
Cloud.
And then we were like, fix your stuff, Google.
We traveled on a cloud.
Yeah. What else did
Jane, why don't you introduce the next one, the Neptune Duo?
Oh, the Neptune Duo.
This has been your
the Neptune. I did a briefing at the Neptune. Neptune, if anybody needs a quick catch up, is essentially a standalone smartwatch that acts like a phone, sort of like the Gear Round. Is it called the Gear Round? The Galaxy Gear S. So it's a phone in smartwatch form, but I guess their goal with this is not so that you can have two separate phone numbers, but so that you can have basically a teeny tiny little tablet as a phone that basically just acts as a display for the watch. So you get all your texts, all your calls on the watch, and then if you want to respond to an email or a text or want to watch a video, you just activate what they call the pocket screen, and it sends that stream from the watch to your pocket screen. And Neptune launched on Kickstarter, or Indiegogo, sorry, with a similar standalone smartwatch last year, but this apparently was the vision. They wanted to have a central hub and then a pocket screen and a pocket tab and all these different devices that you could just send that information to whatever device and form factor you wanted at the time. So they went on and they did their own crowdfunding, I guess, or their own pledging system starting. How long ago was that? When they launched? Not long ago. A few weeks.
A month ago.
No.
About a month ago, yeah. So they did briefings and press and stuff, and then they launched the website and said that, if you pledge X amount of money, you can get the device when it launches at the end of the year. And then this week they said, we've raised $800,000, but we are now going back to Indiegogo, which they said that they weren't going to do. Said they were going it alone this time. But they went back to Indiegogo, and now they're selling it as a package. So when we did the briefing, they showed me the tab, the keyboard, the headphones, the dongle. They showed me all the accessories, but said that they were not ready yet, and they weren't going to be shipping until later in the year, but they will be ready for launch. And I got the impression that they were going to sell them as accessories once the product launched. But now they have this like $750 package where you pay $750 up front and you get everything.
They have a name for it, like the family or something like that, or there's like
the suite, the Neptune Suite, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. The issue, I think, was that they had this kind of like tiered system where you could pay like $500 up front and you would get, when the product's ready, you would get a unit and that would be it. Or you could pay, less and less and less, and depending on how little you paid, the more you would have to pay at launch. So if you wanted to just reserve a unit now, you would have to pay like over $700 for the actual device when it launched at the end of the year. And I think what they probably were seeing was a lot of people reserving it, no money down, no commitment, and then they needed to boost the funds. I mean, it's weird because they told me. I asked them. I said, you guys are going alone, and Indiegogo gets criticism for the fact that if you crowdfund a campaign on there and you don't meet your goal, the money is not returned to the people who have backed the product,
you just keep whatever's there.
So
not necessarily. I think it's a choice that the that the person has, or the
but there is that option, is if you don't meet your goals, or there's a chance that as a user, if you fund it and you don't meet your goals. So I posed that question during the briefing. I said, hey, what happens if not enough people commit to this, or what happens then? And they were like, no, we have the money to make it. We have the money to make it. It's happening. From their last campaign, they were like, we have the funds. This product is happening. But then we had a second briefing. BetaKit had a briefing, Tom Emmerich, and he asked what happens if you guys don't get enough interest, and he said they'd can it. So I don't know. There's a lack of clarity on what would happen if the funding campaign wasn't successful. But it looks like Plan B was to go back to Indiegogo, because that's what they've done.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, I mean, what's interesting to me is that this sounds and looks a lot like what Motorola was trying to do with its lap dock back in 2011 with the Atrix and the Razr.
The Atrix,
if you recall, you'd plug in your Atrix and it would give you. I mean, it's very different. It's all wireless now, but same idea is that what your phone is essentially powering computing experiences on different size screens.
Your watch.
And in this case, it's the watch. Well, no, in that case, it was the phone. Yeah. In this case, it's the watch. But what I don't get is why it has to be a watch, right? The smartphone is it's a superior form factor to do this. There's more room. It's a more accepted, type of device in our lives.
And it's interesting.
Far more likely.
Because when you ask him about it, I asked the CEO about it, and he's this really young guy, and he seems really clever too, and he's very driven. But I asked him about it, and I said, the way they kind of pitch this product is current smartwatches don't really offer you anything beyond what your phone can do already. When you really cut down and cut through all the fog, what your smartwatch can do is cut out the few seconds it takes for you to take your phone out and check it. Mm-hmm. Because there isn't a whole lot of meaningful interaction that can happen on your wrist. So he was saying, they want to change that and say that and enable your smartwatch and your wrist to do more. And when I asked, well, then what's the point of it being a watch? If that's your goal, if your goal is to have one hub and then all these other devices that are powered by that and get their content from that, and that's a really promising and interesting idea. But when I asked why it had to be a watch, he just was like, oh, well, people are familiar. It's the same answer that all wearables companies give, which is people are familiar with watches. The watch already has a place on their wrist.
Well, it's accessible. I think the broad argument is all tech being equal. If making a smartwatch could have happened at the same time we're building the technology to do a smartphone, would people have chosen a larger screen that they have to carry in their pocket and pull out when they need it, or something that just sits on their wrist at all times, which they can quickly look at, but then require something else for specific issues? And they're trying to make the argument that if the feature set of the phone and the smartwatch are 90% equal, people will be much happier to just have something
but
with a lower kind of footprint on the wrist all day, and then really just pull out the screen when they need the screen, which I think is kind of cool. I don't know if just the way that the technology has progressed and the embeddedness of smartphones will be easy to combat, but I also think, again, this is another example of the hardware is being added before the software is ready to really have a benefit.
And when you ask about the Android experience on the watch, they haven't done a whole lot to it. It's pretty much just stock.
I don't see that, though. I mean, their renders look like it's a completely different UI.
Well, that's what he said. Oh, yeah, sorry. And I roll my eyes, which is really bad. But during the briefing, I said, what are you going to do with it? And it was stock on their original Neptune. And I asked what they're going to do. Are you going to leave the UI the same? Sorry, I stand corrected. I asked if they're going to leave the UI the same, and he said, no, we're gonna change the game. It's going to be revolutionary. And I was like, well, can you tell me more about that? And then he said no. So they're going to do this apparently revolutionary new UI, but
they're biting off a lot. But
And
it
this guy
is
is only
interesting.
20 years old too, so.
Well, age
Yeah,
aside, there's got a company behind him. Like, I don't want to be super ageist.
No.
I'm just saying, for a young company, this is biting off a lot. But also in their approach, it might be an opportunity because no matter what anyone says, all the kind of like smartwatch OSs or engagements have been built to as the secondary component to a smartphone, rather than just like if I
Yeah, but
were interacting with a smartwatch first and primarily, how should this go?
But I think if you go back to what you were saying earlier on when you said, oh, if when we were developing technology for smartphones, we asked people which do you want to watch your phone, like which form factor and medium do you want to get this information and receive it and interact with it. I don't think a lot of people would have said watch then either. Because don't forget, before smartphones, between watches and smartphones, there was dumb phones, and people were using that to check the time. So even then, a lot of people had stopped wearing watches. And
So I just mean like if we in a time machine, which after
Reader
killing
poll.
Hitler
Reader
and
poll.
saving JFK, went back with the Neptune Duo and an iPhone 6 and said, which one do you want to carry around all the time?
Well, the problem is
To
you'd have to have a
someone in
Neptune
1990
Duo and the pocket screen and an iPhone, and you would say which one do you want?
Okay, so yeah, so let's do Duo screen, and then an iPhone 6 and an Apple Watch, and say
No, because you don't need the Apple Watch to use the phone. Like that's the problem.
Okay.
Is that I mean, this is a bad analogy. I feel like we're on the wrong path.
as long as Hitler dies, it doesn't matter, right? But
What about JFK? Screw him, right? Like, geez, Daniel.
no, I love JFK.
Well, he said, kill Hitler, save JFK.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that part. I was just fantasizing about killing Hitler. So I think it misses the point. Or not misses the point, but we didn't talk about a point. Is a smartwatch inherently a good form factor to interact with on its own? Is there opportunity there to improve something that's limited to staying put? Because generally with a smartphone you can turn it into landscape, it's malleable, you can put it in either pocket, you can put it down, you can play games with it,
Yeah,
you
but
can
Daniel,
do whatever you want. Yeah.
when we talked about the Apple Watch last week, 2 weeks ago, I don't remember. I think
Did
like
we talk about it
both.
last week? Did it make it onto the podcast?
When was the Tom?
I don't know.
pod?
I think I
Tom pod was 2
can't
weeks
remember
ago?
what we talked
I
about
think
last
we
week.
talked
It
about it very
wasn't.
briefly, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't entirely one thing or anything.
There was a lot of other stuff happening. Not. Last week was...
Okay.
Sorry, anyway.
But no, so when we talk about the Apple Watch and smartwatches in general, we're like, well, this doesn't do anything my phone can't do. But
Right.
in that statement is, well, it can do it. It does the notifications. Like, there's a lot of stuff that your phone does that it doesn't need to be a phone to do. And there are things that you do, like, the screen, the orientation and stuff. So can you get by with, like, is it actually more beneficial to, of all the things that your phone can do, but it doesn't really need a phone for, notifications, quick replies, whatever, all that stuff, consumption of content, because it's like they have a bigger screen, right? It's not like an Apple Watch thing. It's like a. Could you get by with that and then just pull out like a phone when you really needed it, like a tablet when you really needed it?
Nah, I think there's a reason why phone screens have gotten bigger too, because consumption of content. Just to address that, I think people don't want to do that on a smaller screen. So it would just be notifications and quick replies for now, I think.
And is there anything on a smartwatch that is inherently better than on a smartphone? I mean,
Absolutely not.
I don't think I've argued once, and if I have, then I take it back. I don't think the Apple Watch does anything better than an iPhone. Like, if you're comparing the features, the exact, the same features. If you're talking about, using apps, making phone calls, messaging people. I mean, digital touch is interesting, but is it inherently a better way to communicate? No, probably not. I mean, language is language, right? There's a reason.
No, I'm just saying.
Continue it. I get what you're saying. I just think that part of the appeal of the Apple Watch and of other smartwatches like the Moto 360 and the Huawei Watch is that they're fashion pieces. There's nothing fashionable about the Neptune Duo. I don't think that a screen that wraps around your wrist like like a bangle is a fashion statement at all. And I actually think that it's like with the Gear S, it's going to end up being really chunky and uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is far more function. But I guess that's the question. It's like this technological thought experiment. Is it more functional to do this stuff on your wrist than have a phone?
No,
because it's not doing anything. It's not doing anything better. But the thing is, you don't have to carry around a phone. It's just there. It's just there when you need it. Glitch, reboot, like, you know.
I think the phone form factor has proven over the last 10 years that people want to carry around a phone. I mean, the fact that phones have gotten thinner and lighter mean that they're taking up less space in our pockets while doing more at the same time.
Yeah, but back to killing Hitler, we didn't have the ability to make a smartwatch 10 years ago. That's why I'm saying, like, if we had both equal technologies at the exact same time to choose between, which interaction model would we choose?
Well, I think the phone would be better anyway. Objectively, it would be better, in my opinion. But I also think that we couldn't. That question is one of those Latin terms that I forget. Whatever time, like it's an illogical proposition, because the whole idea of Moore's law, the whole idea of the diminishing size of components means that 10 years ago, and I know you're making sort of a general statement, but there's no way that could have happened, right? There's no way that we could have had the phone and the watch at the same time. The phone had to come first, just like the laptop had to come before the phone, and just like the desktop had to come before the laptop. Those designs and those form factors had to come in the order that they came in.
But so what? If we have them now, if this thing fails because everyone has gotten used to smartphones and people are comfortable with it, and it's not new and different enough to make an impact, or there's only really one company doing it and the rest of the industry is doing something else. If it fails for those like economic, social reasons, whatever, that's one thing. If it fails because it isn't better, that's another. You know? Like, because you can make a very strong argument that this is going to have an impact just because history went another way. I'm just saying, if just to evaluate it on the merits of their idea.
I think the issue is that
is it valuable? And I think to be honest, it's more interesting than the Apple Watch.
Yeah, but I think there's a really important factor that will have a huge impact on how people decide, which is that you don't have to wear the Apple Watch. You don't have to wear an Android Wear watch. Like, if there is a time when you're like, you know what, I'm going to a wedding, I'm getting married, like whatever, I'm doing something that, I don't want to wear this thing on my wrist. You don't have to do that with other similar solutions. With the Neptune, you would have to wear it if you wanted to have your phone, if you wanted to have, your laptop, if you wanted to have whatever, your tablet, you would need to be wearing the Duo.
Totally.
Which is awful.
But then you also don't really necessarily have to carry the tablet around either, right?
No, you don't. No, what I'm saying is that but that's only useful for if I want to, go for, a run or walk on the beach. Like, I don't agree with the idea that they would make me, like, you can say you have to carry your phone everywhere. I'm like, okay, well, I could find somewhere to put it. But if you tell me I have to wear my phone on my body invisible at all times, then I have a problem with that.
Well, yeah,
that's another thing. You wear your Moto 360 all the time, though.
I don't wear it all the time. In fact, the first thing I do when I get to work when I'm typing is I take it off because it's like clacks against my keyboard.
Okay, that's really fair. I don't know. I'm also the kind of guy eating smartphone, so like.
You haven't pushed that in a while.
It's coming.
Yeah,
isn't
but Doug,
it?
I mean, think about it like this: if you have to carry around a watch because that's your central, CPU repository. And there's no alternative way to wear it, it's a security risk, it's a privacy risk. Even though you can take out your phone, if somebody grabs your wrist, and if smartwatches become the main source of computing for millions of people, as we dealt with smartphone theft and still do, I think smartwatch theft is going to proliferate, and it would be
Oh, no way.
such a problem.
No. It's way easier to pinch a phone you leave in your bag or in your coat or sitting on a table versus, hi, I'm going to rip this off your wrist right now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of those smartwatch. I mean, we're talking about different types of watch straps, but the way that this has been designed is more like a bangle, where you can easily rip that off somebody's wrist.
It's
I mean,
got
if
like a gap in it. Yeah.
a nice watch band is not coming off. No, you're absolutely right. But it's also a privacy risk too. If everything is coming through on your wrist, that's exposed to people. You know, a notification would show up on your wrist, and that's a common privacy concern of current smartwatches.
Can you see what time it is on my wrist right now?
Your wrist.
Can you see what time it is?
Yeah, except for the fact that you're
it's freckle past the hair. I have my hand over.
It.
I think it's
I'm supposed to walk around like this the whole time because my phone is like, that's ridiculous.
Well, you'd have to do the same thing.
Well, we're talking about what.
When I'm driving and I have my watch on and someone's sitting beside me in the passenger seat and I've got my hands on the wheels and they can see my watch, like, and I can't cover it. I can't do anything about it.
Is there no sleep mode?
Doug, we're talking about best case scenarios here. We're talking about, is a smartwatch inherently a better form factor for doing basic digital, internet-based tasks? And I think you're making this argument because you want to win this argument. I don't think.
No, I mean, no. I'm saying I don't know.
No, you're playing devil's advocate, which is fine.
Yeah, because I at least think it's an interesting question to be asking. I think there possibly is a case for it. I don't know. I don't think there. I think there's, like, I'm agreeing with you that there's probably like 1,000 reasons why this thing isn't going to become the new dominant form, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't necessarily the best. Like, VHS still beat Beta, right?
No, I know. I thought of that earlier.
I'm looking through Tom's post on BetaKit. The one Tom Emmerich wrote a post called "Smart Clothing: A Huge Trend at UK's Largest Wearable Tech Show," and these pieces of wearables excite me. Right, wearing a pair of gloves that actually have a small heating mechanism in them, so that they'll heat your hands. These are the kinds of wearables that excite me because they're purpose-based, right? Putting a smartphone on your wrist for the sake of it is not solving a problem,
right?
Because the smartphone does that, solves that better. I mean, it's the same thing. You can bike from here to New York City, and you'd get there and you'd be ripped afterwards and whatever, but it would take you a really long time, right? A locomotive is always going to be faster than a self-propelled vehicle. It's like you can do two things. You can solve the same thing two ways, but one is better than the other. There are consequences to both, as we discussed.
You're just saying that something's objective, but it's like you said, it was objectively better in your opinion, which is it's subjectively better. I'm just saying that, like, what if like, yeah, you do less because it's on your wrist, but that means we don't have 30 people in the streetcar with us all staring at our phones playing stupid games. We're only looking at stuff when we need it. I'm just saying, like, we just have to, like, experience this thing to evaluate it.
You're absolutely
right. And looking at it as a
100%.
smartphone on your wrist means, like, isn't giving it enough credit as, like, a different approach. This is different than, like, Samsung releasing a smartwatch with a SIM card in it.
It's not. I mean, the Neptune Duo is being marketed exactly that. It's a smartphone on your wrist, just with other form factors that you can augment it with. Give me something unique. Give me new ways of doing things. Give me new functions for living on my wrist. Don't just try to reproduce a smartphone.
Remember too is that they're marketing as a smartphone on your wrist, but the base level minimum is like you can't buy that on its own. Like they will ship you the pocket screen right off the bat because they know that you are going to sit on the streetcar and you're going to still want to stare into your phone. So they'll give you a little dummy phone to stare into. So I don't think it will change anything really in that regard.
Yeah. Look, Doug, I mean, you're not wrong. I think that there are innumerable use cases for smartwatches. I just don't think the Neptune Duo solves any problems better than having a smartphone paired with a smartwatch companion, at least in 2015. This could be a great transition product both for Neptune and the industry, right? Just the way that Pebble is held up as a really great transition product for a lot of smartphone users trying to determine whether smartwatches would fit into their lives. I think that they could find some success with this. It's more about the company's vision than about this generation of product. So I hope they do well.
Yeah, that's probably true. Like the Neptune Trio's gonna be badass.
I hope so. And cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's expensive because the Canadian dollar's weak. Yeah, we didn't talk about the fact that the iPhone is now $100 more.
Yeah. Lucky us.
Lucky us. Everything's going to go up, though.
Yeah.
Is it now, or is Rogers still waiting for Canadian customers to get used to the price increase before increasing it themselves?
Right now, it's still the old price, so it's been about a week. They said that it will go up. $350 for an entry-level iPhone 6.
How much is entry-level Galaxy S6?
$250.
Nice.
It's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
But people who bought the Nexus 6, moving on, are getting more value for their money with the Android 5.1 update. This update solves a bunch of problems that emerged with Android 5 and then 5.1 or 5.0.1. Apparently, the device wasn't using all 4 of its CPU cores. At least it wasn't turning them on when it needed to. So not only has performance improved, but the kernel, according to Jane, who wrote the article, has been tweaked to only wake up the CPUs when they're actually needed. So all 4 of the cores are now going to work when they're needed, and they'll all go to sleep when they're not needed. So it's a way more efficient device these days. And you've done some testing, right? It does perform better?
I think yes. I think the performance is better on the Nexus 6. I think it's a lot smoother. I think the average user is still going to look to the UI changes and stuff and say, hey, this isn't better. So I think I'm really trying to be careful when I know Daniel, I was talking to you about this. I've had a few people message me and say, how do I switch back? They're on Nexus 5 or whatever, and they've updated to Lollipop, and they're like, I want to go back to KitKat. And I think for those people, I don't know how it runs in the Nexus 5, obviously, but I'm trying to hedge my bets and say and not make any promises that I can't keep, because a lot of the growing pains I think for the average user is with the UI and the software inflation, and not with the performance. But battery life should be better, which is awesome, because they have tweaked stuff there too. Because this full quad-core mode thing, at all times, the developer who actually wrote about this, Francisco Franco, that's something that he did in his own kernel, and he said that he had already tweaked this because he had weighed the trade-off between battery life and performance and decided that it was worth it to enable full quad-core mode. And that Google has obviously come to the same conclusion, but they've made different optimizations for the battery so that they've kind of, I guess, balanced it out in that way. So while full quad-core mode should I guess theoretically use up more power, they've cancelled it out with optimizations that see. They used to the task scheduler used to send out a notification every time one thread was migrated from between the CPU cores. And now, so what it used to do is it sent out a notification, and it would tell the core that the thread was moving to it would kind of clock the frequency of the original core and then try and match them, and it would it boosts the destination core to match it, or exceed the frequency of the original core, and
that sounds really complicated.
Yeah, it is. It's complicated, and it's not. Again, the average user isn't going to care about this, but so that's what Franco had in his kernel. Sorry. So he basically had it so that it doesn't do that boosting anymore. So he did it to conserve power, and I guess Google did the same thing. And then the first thing, which was improvements to Android runtime, and then the full quad core mode. Sorry,
Well, that's always been the argument for multi-core, kind of in the first place, right? Like more cores running at like equilibrium is better than super clocking a single core, right?
Yeah. So sorry, I just want to make clear that I had myself backwards. So the core boosting is what Francisco Franco had in his kernel.
Right.
But yeah. So other than that, I don't know if we've seen like the silent mode. They've kind of tweaked that a bit. There's still no silent mode, but they've made it possible to do what we thought, which was just enable no notifications and then until your next alarm.
Well, I mean, there is a silent mode, right? It's just none.
Yeah, but before it was like none ever.
Now it's none until your next alarm.
Yeah, but I've heard that it's only until your next alarm if your next alarm is within 12 hours, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, I think.
But what if I turn it on in the morning time? I haven't tried it, but what if I turn it on, let's say my alarm goes off at 8, and at 8:30 I go into meeting with you, and I don't want Doug to bug me, so I put it on none. But then because my next alarm isn't set till 8 the next morning, it doesn't say, hey, do you want me to switch this back on once you're trying to wake up? Maybe it assumes
I'm gonna have to look into that.
8:30 in the morning and 8 o'clock the next morning you will interact with your phone in some way that will cause you to turn on the notifications. I don't know.
Well, I just checked the Rogers website, and they have updated the pricing of the iPhone 6.
Oh.
So it's now $349 for a 16 gigabyte iPhone 6, $479 for a 16 gigabyte iPhone 6 Plus, and the most expensive iPhone 6 Plus, the 128 gig version, is now $729 on contract.
Give me the price first. So if I was buying an iPhone tomorrow, based on my needs alone, I would say that I need a 32 gig iPhone 6. So what's that going to run me?
There is no 32 gig. It
goes 16. Sorry.
64.
So I would go for not the 16, but the next one. So what's that?
$479. That's a lot.
Plus the $500 for my watch.
That's more money than a lot of phones are on off contract. So if you wanted to buy a Nexus 5, that's $128 more than the Nexus 5 costs outright.
What's the straight up non-contract price?
Oh yeah.
For the 64 gig version, $969. So the subsidy is the same. That's why it's $500 subsidy basically, or just under $500 subsidy. $480.
That's crazy.
Or $490. So
crazy pants.
It's not cheap to buy an iPhone anymore, and I wonder how much of an impact that'll be.
Do you think if any of the big three offered, because I know that this just cropped up because earlier this week we were talking about how Korea has like a limit on how much a carrier can subsidize. But do you think if any of the big three subsidized it down to like, who so basically didn't increase their prices to match Apple, or said, you know, hey, we're gonna charge like $199 for the entry level iPhone 6 and go up from there. Do you think that would be worth it for them? And I say big three because
they'd have to charge more for an iPhone plan. It's a matter of customer acquisition cost. The amount of money they spend to buy an iPhone is probably close to what it costs a user to buy it on a no term. So who knows what Rogers spends on a 16 gigabyte or 64 gigabyte iPhone, but it's probably no lower than $900. So they're not making much profit from the hardware itself. Their subsidy comes from the notion that over 2 years, if you're saving $500, you're going to be spending however much, right? $2,500 on your plan. And they've worked out that it'll cost them money to subsidize these phones more than $490, $500. I mean, with Android phones, there's often a kickback from the OEM. The OEM will subsidize it somewhat, so you may get a higher subsidy. So, for example, with older Samsung phones like the Galaxy Alpha, that's a $650 phone when you buy it outright, but it's $0. So the subsidy is $650. Whether Rogers is just eating that extra $150 because they want to clear the inventory, or whether Samsung's saying, hey, in order to keep this on the shelf, we want to give your customers a a better swath of Samsung phones, we're
Yeah.
going to kick you $150 to make up the difference. I don't know, but it's definitely, Apple does
probably the
not
latter.
give much leeway when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Or it could also be that Samsung's charging Rogers less per device the farther along in its life cycle it goes.
We'll see. Either way, sucks for iPhone users.
Great for Galaxy S6 users.
Yep.
Because it now separates the Galaxy S6. Not only does the entry-level GS6 come with 32 gigs of storage, but it's now $100 less rather than $15 less. So, I mean, that's a big, big upside for Samsung here.
Yeah. You reviewed the Galaxy S6.
I did. I just wanted, before we move on, the Nexus 5 no longer available on the Canadian Play Store. It's gone from the world. Nobody can buy a Nexus 5 anymore. The only phone Google will sell you is a Nexus 6, which is, as we've talked about many times, really, really massive. But the next Nexus, whatever it may be called, is reportedly being produced by LG again.
Yeah. So
whether
4,
that means
5,
that
and 7.
they're going to be making, whether they're going to be making another 5-inch or maybe 5.2-inch Nexus phone, I don't know. But I hope so. Because the world needs smaller phones again.
Yeah.
But if not, buy a Galaxy S6 if you can afford it, because it's really, really, really good. I reviewed it. I really like it. It's a big upgrade from the Galaxy S5. I think that a lot of iPhone users will actually like it, mainly because of the metal build and the fact that the camera is really good. So
camera is amazing.
Yeah, the camera is amazing. I mean, it's got an f1.9 lens, which lets in more light. It has a side effect of having a shallower depth of field than most smartphone cameras, which means that if you, say, point it at an object right in front of you, everything in the background will be blurred out. A lot of people like that effect, but it's a very personal thing. I don't know if everybody's going to like it, so take that into account. But most things about this, from the camera to the fingerprint sensor to the form factor to everything, is just massively improved. So
yeah, go and read the review because it's amazing.
That's
tell you everything you need to know.
And the Galaxy S6 Edge review is coming up in the next few days as well. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome.
What do you guys what do you guys think of the HTC One M9? You guys have any opinions?
I want the camera to be better. I've touched it. I think it's more. I think it's interesting how like so many manufacturers are trying to go slimmer. HTC actually made it a bit thicker, but it makes for a much better phone. I think it feels a lot more. Feels like less slippy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, the HTC One M8 never felt like it wasn't a solid phone. Like it always felt like it was like slim and delicate, but built like a tank. Like you knew you weren't going to break it.
Totally.
But
it's like a phone that you would use to hit other phones with.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing is that the One M8 was the first phone that I never used a case with, because I was always so afraid of breaking other phones and like denting them and stuff. And I dropped that phone so many times, and
case for life.
Yeah, and it was fine. And I think that I'm assuming that the One M9 is going to be similar because it's actually a bit bulkier, but it doesn't feel bulkier. So
no, it's actually a bit narrower. So
no, as in like thicker, like more bulk in the back.
Yeah, no, but
more junk
exactly.
in the front.
It has a bigger camera, bigger battery, but because it's slightly narrower, it feels smaller, which is great.
It's unique.
I don't think it stands out in any of the ways in which they said it would. Like if you want to go like we were just talking about the S6 from like S5 to S6, that's like, hey, wow, whew, new phone there. And with the M9, it doesn't seem like that's the case.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. I know that there's the camera update. that you talked about last week, or when talked about from Mobile World Congress, you said that you were using an early version of the camera software. So I want to hear about that, and I want to hear your thoughts about that in the next few days, because when you have a chance to play with it. Because that's my biggest beef with the 1M8 was the camera was crap.
Well, from what I tried it in Barcelona, the 1M9 has trade-offs. You have higher spatial resolution. Clearly, it's 5 times the resolution, 20 megapixels over 4. But the pixels, the size of the individual pixels is considerably smaller as a result. It goes from a 2 or 2 micron pixel size to 1.2, which is, it's almost halved. So the amount of light each pixel lets in is considerably less. And it's a trade-off, right?
But that's what makes the S6 so... Oh, sorry.
No, you're right. That's what makes the S6 so amazing.
Yeah, because we were sitting around the office the other day, just like looking at photos going back and forth. And while there were differences between the iPhone 6 photo and the S6 photo, they were both.
Yeah, they were both great.
There wasn't a photo where you're like, I wouldn't be happy with this. They were like just 2 takes on the same image, which is like has there ever been a phone that's not an iPhone that you could have said that about?
Yeah, I think it's interesting just that I feel like it's the first Android phone where the camera quality is like the pictures are different, but you would never say that one is better over the other. You're like, hey, like this one's a little bluer, this one's a little warmer, but neither of them feel inaccurate, which is great.
I've spent a lot of time comparing the Galaxy S6 photos to the iPhone 6 Plus, and the reason I do it with the Plus is because both of them have optical image stabilization. So theoretically, in low light situations, both phones should keep the shutter open longer in order to make a better sort of low light shot. But the image stabilization keeps the phone from shaking, so you're not going to get that blur when the shutter is open longer, ideally. The thing that I found is that the iPhone actually produces better low light shots more often than not. And that's because I don't know whether the sensor, I know the sensor has larger pixels, so it can capture more light, but the optical image stabilization module appears to be more effective. For example, I took a shot last night, and the iPhone kept the shutter open longer, but the blur was actually heightened on the S6. So Apple still seems to have an advantage when it comes to that. But everything else, just from like daylight shots to the speed at which the camera opens, is amazing. I'm really, really impressed. And yeah,
I was impressed with the
out
number
April
of times I tried to pick up your S6 thinking it was my iPhone 6 on the table.
Yeah, that's gonna happen. That's gonna happen.
What do you think of the back? Hot takes back.
It's like beefy bust.
It's beefy bust.
Like it's like a comme ci comme ça. Like there's advantages to both. I think like the glass back is pretty until you touch it, and then it's just like got your like grubby fingers all over it. And one drop, I feel, is going to break it. Like I would love to try do a drop test on this, but I'm worried that like a single drop from like half an inch up is just going to shatter the screen.
Sadness.
So yeah, I don't know. It's such a pretty phone that I wouldn't.
Right? And Gorilla Glass 4 was developed for shattering. Like it was developed to protect against that.
It's glass. Glass is going to shatter. They said the same thing about the Gorilla Glass 3. It was meant for anti-scratch, but they did say that it was.
Yeah, but their whole marketing push with Gorilla Glass 4 is like pretty girls dropping their phones on the street and going, and then being like heaving a big sigh of relief. Like they're basically saying like yeah, scratches and that, but like it's less likely to break. So I don't know. I feel like I think it's a stronger push this time. I hope. We'll see.
What if we threw the 1M9 at it? Would it break?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. The 1M9 is a solid phone. It's way, way, way more solid than any. I mean, it's just substantial. Like there's nothing about the 1M9 that doesn't say this is a premium smartphone.
Yeah. But least likely you'd want to meet in a dark alley for sure.
And
especially when it hits the boom sound.
The boom sound is so good.
Well, I'm getting a bit sad because I'm realizing that it's coming to that time where we have to reveal something that's really that's really awful for the MobileSyrup team, and
maybe for the readers.
And definitely for the readers. We have to say goodbye to Jane.
No.
And I'll let you sort of explain what I mean.
Well, it's time to say goodbye. There's no explanation needed. I mean, today, I guess you guys are going to be listening on Friday, unless Daniel really gets his stuff together and gets this up tonight. But
I'm not getting it up tonight.
There you go. So today's Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. And today is going to be my last day at MobileSyrup because I will be leaving, which is sad. But I will still be.
She's joining Mars 1. He's actually going to be going.
Yeah, I'm never going back. No, I will be still around on the site. I'll be in the comments, and I'll be reading every post as I did before I started with MobileSyrup. And it's been a really great ride, and the readers are awesome, and obviously the team is awesome too. So I'm going to be sad to go, but.
Well, yeah. I just want to say, on behalf of everybody, thank you so much. You have brought such just your attitude, your writing, your work ethic, everything. It's been a gift, and thank you so much. I wanted to get this on tape so that it's going to be around forever. You've been an amazing addition to MobileSyrup and to the
You'll have me back anytime, right?
Team. That's a thing. And we will have you back when you're back from Mars successfully.
Oh, you guys are the best.
You're our favorite Irish twin.
Oh, burn. My sister won't be happy. But yeah, it's been great, and I hope that this is not goodbye for good.
Agreed.
It can't be. You have the podcast board behind you. We need that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Although, I don't know if you guys can see, but I couldn't find the blue marker. I couldn't have the black one. So I had to hastily rub off some of it.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Surrepsis.
So yeah. Maybe I'll donate the board to the cause.
And bring in your work-issued green headphones, please, tomorrow.
Yes.
I will.
Okay, folks, well, it is with a heavy heart that I have to say goodbye, both to you and to Jane. Less so to Douglas, because I'm going to see him. I'm going to see him tomorrow. But I won't see you tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
I'll love you tomorrow.
It's only a day away. Anyway.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope this was diverse enough for you. We'll be back next week with lots of stuff. There's going to be a few embargoes that are breaking, so we'll talk about that.
Expiring.
And
we will not be breaking them.
The embargoes will be broken by the time we join you next week. That's our show. Have a great week, everybody. Stay safe, stay warm, and
stay mobile.
Have a tipple. Have a drink for us, for Jane.
Pour one out.
We'll see you later.